This is the Khmer Times News. My name is Paolo Bonini, and these are your headlines. We have a special Ukraine update with some truly shocking footage. There is some wonderful news for the dolphins that are on the very brink of extinction. And drinking and driving is now certainly no longer acceptable. Firstly, though, we ran a story 2 weeks ago with the latest news from the Ukraine, and at the heart of it was the Russians focusing all their military might on Bakhmut. But first, they had to liberate the neighbouring town called Solidar. Well, this week, I have an update on that story, as some footage came across my desk and I feel compelled to share it with you. For it shows so very clearly the suffering inflicted upon Ukraine, and we see what the Russian bear, drunk on its own propaganda, is doing to Ukraine, as it deals devastating hammer blows to one town after another, desperate to claim any form of victory from the chasm of defeat that has opened up before it, even if a victory brings incalculable misery, horrifying deaths, and unimaginable destruction.
You may remember a couple of weeks ago we did a story on Solidar, which is near Bakhmut, and that is what you're seeing on your screen. This small, almost insignificant town within Ukraine, which has become the very focal point of the war. And as we zoom in closer still, you can see it's barely a town. It could be called just a large village. And as we take our final step closer, we see it looks exactly like your hometown. It could be anywhere on this earth, a peaceful, tranquil place. Well, now it is certainly peaceful. And this is that exact same town today, Solidar. And this footage has only recently been released, and it shows the terrible plight of the Ukrainians. The Russians, as they attempt to advance, are liberating cities. And this is what that liberation looks like. It is complete and utter destruction. And if there has been any comparison in Europe in the last century, it could only be of Berlin in 1945, that was smashed to smithereens by Allied bombing. So the tragedy in the Ukraine continues on, as does the suffering. But hold on. Some people may call foul, saying I'm just highlighting a single battlefield. Well, that is not the case, because what you see on your screen now is Maninka, which is in the Donetsk region. And it's exactly the same story, because this is what's happening throughout Ukraine. The levelling of cities, just so the Russians can gain some ground and call it a victory. The carnage is quite simply horrific. And spare a thought for all those that have been uprooted from their lives and separated from their families, who now sleep in freezing foxholes, just trying to live another day.
We at the Khmer Times have been highlighting the plight of the endangered dolphins of the Mekong, who are dying unnecessarily by being trapped in fishing nets placed illegally within the dolphin sanctuaries. Now, you may think that's just a few feet of net, but it is not. There is literally tens of kilometres of nets creating kill zones that are slaughtering these highly endangered dolphins. Well, now there is some good news to update you with, and that is the government has stepped in and said to fishermen in the area of the dolphin sanctuary that they must leave the conservation area for good and leave those waters free of all nets so the dolphins may live.
Karachi Provincial Department of Agriculture has instructed fishermen to dismantle floating houses, docks and fish farms from within the dolphin conservation area. The Karachi Provincial Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries has given the fishermen only 30 days to dismantle their floating homes and remove all fishing docks from within the dolphin conservation zone. The authorities also made the families sign contracts, agreeing never to settle within that area again. The strict action came after families had built complete floating docks and fish farms on the Mekong River, all within the dolphin sanctuary. The director of the Fisheries Administration said, "Authorities have given the fishermen only until February the 28th to remove all structures from their current locations, and if the families fail to comply with their contracts, the local authorities will punish them with the full extent of the law." The dolphins' plight is exceedingly grave. They are a greatly endangered species. And in order to help to keep them alive, the governor of Karachi province has banned people from fishing between Anglong Ko Trong up to the border of Stung Treng province, and that is over 100 kilometres in length. Now, personally, I can't tell you how happy this story has made me. I have to plough through way too many photos of dead dolphins to illustrate these stories. But at long last, now, this endangered species has been given the breathing space that it so desperately needs.
So the dolphins are looking at a brighter future. So why don't we make this our happiest broadcast ever with yet more good news on the wildlife front? The government has announced this week that 6 provinces have now been targeted in a new zero snare campaign. And many conservationists say this news could not come fast enough. I, myself, spend an awful lot of time in the countryside and jungle filming. And what strikes me is the silence. There is hardly any birds singing. But when I film in Thailand, there is a chorus of various birds to be heard. And the reason for this is snaring. A horrible death, not just for birds, but for all animals, caught in a wire loop. And when they struggle, the wire digs into their throats. And they are slowly strangled to death in the most barbaric way imaginable.
Here is the bare bones of this matter. Literally everything that moves is being harvested from the jungle. For if you can sell it, then great. The more endangered and rare it is, the higher the price it will fetch. And if it's not saleable, then it's probably edible. And it is this 1-2 combination that literally hoovers up all the wildlife and does immeasurable damage not only to Cambodia's wildlife but also its ecosystem. And it is also why, if you go walking out in the jungle, you will be greeted by an eerie silence. For what you are hearing is the vacuum left by the death of so many animals. But now the Ministry of Environment is targeting 6 provinces in phase 2 of its zero snaring campaign to educate people about the consequences of trapping and hunting wildlife. The 6 targeted provinces will take place over the next 5 months, starting on World Wildlife Day, which is March the 3rd. The 6 provinces are Kampong Speu, Pasat, Koh Kong, Battambang, Palin and Siem Reap. A spokesman said the campaign is necessary for the protection and conservation of wildlife within Cambodia. He said, public awareness campaigns in particularly involve raising awareness amongst wildlife eaters and wildlife traders to make them aware of the risks to their personal and public health that may result from consuming wildlife. And just like the dolphins and the fishermen nets, this real issue is all about law enforcement and education combined. As the traditional ways of looking at the depleted forest and considering it a larder for harvesting food must now be forgotten, as the forests can no longer look after themselves, and it is for us not to be the hunters, but to be their guardians.
Laws are being suggested to make irresponsible drivers liable for their selfish and often lunatic driving. The Interior Ministry is at current considering a law which I think is a superb idea, and that is to hold motorists liable for a child's welfare if the child is disabled in an accident. So, if a drink driver ploughs into some kids and they are disabled in any way, then the driver responsible is to pay for the welfare of that child until it reaches 18 years of age. And that is a brilliant idea. No more easy one-off fine or settlement, but an ongoing duty to care and to maintain that child so it is not disadvantaged in life. And at the very heart of this wonderful idea lays a very dark tragedy, for it was the death of a 2-month-old baby by a drunk driver that was to motivate this radical new policy.
Traffic offenders could soon be held liable for their crimes and to provide financial support to any child they have disabled in an accident. And those financial payments could go on all the way till the child is 18 years of age. The Ministry of Interior is now considering this as an inclusion to the law that will compel motorists at fault to take responsibility for minors that they injure and ordering them to pay ongoing reparations. Rather interestingly, the Interior Minister told of where this idea came from, and he said in an announcement, I read about a case in the United States where drivers who cause injuries to children are held responsible for raising and caring for their victims all the way up until they turn 18. He added that the current situation of road traffic accidents needs a serious review, as road accidents in Cambodia remain alarmingly high, which results in an awful lot of unnecessary deaths and serious injuries. He added the new laws being drafted would also include the revocation of licences when drivers are caught drunk or on drugs. At last, I hear you cry. A law that says if you are drunk or high, you will be banned from driving. And this has to be the largest step forward in traffic laws for some time, as in one very swift move, it says very clearly, it is not okay to drink and drive. It is now socially unacceptable. And for so many, this has been an awful long time coming, but is extremely welcome.
It is not only those involved in accidents that are being held accountable. There is also a much more stringent effort by police to enforce traffic laws. Now, you may know that I make videos of abandoned and neglected temples, and in doing so, I travel the length and breadth of the entire country, travelling tens of thousands of kilometres each year. And in my travels, I am spotting a new phenomenon, and that is police roadside checks. And they are appearing in many towns across the nation. Thousands of motorists are being pulled over and being questioned for drink driving, road tax, and overloaded vehicles. And these roadside checks so far have netted 8,000 offenders who have fallen foul of the new demerit programme, which punishes drivers who refuse to obey the rules.
During the first 4 months of the pilot test programme, the police found more than 8,000 offenders and deducted more than 10,000 points to enforce road traffic laws and to reduce the never-ending rise in accidents and deaths on the nation's roads. During a road safety meeting this week, the Secretary of State for the Ministry of Public Works said that in just 4 short months, the police had found 2,000 traffic offenders each and every month, and that is 500 prosecutions a week. And there is a number that is quite surprising, as from my own experience, I see an awful lot of truck drivers being pulled over. But it is in fact the car drivers who are being penalised the most. Of the 8,500 traffic offenders, 7,500 were car drivers and only 1,000 were in fact truck drivers. The Ministry of Public Works spokesman added, "The first step is a penalty fine, issued as a warning not to commit further offences. But if offences continue, the next step is to deduct points from licences. And then when all 12 points have been taken, their licence is revoked." Now, I don't know as to if some offences, such as leaving the scene of an accident, warrants the offender a compulsory ban, and maybe just a jail sentence. For it is still in the early stages, and laws are something that are ripened and matured with time. But this recent wave of crackdowns is a huge step in the right direction.
And now it's time to look at our sports news.
Here are the Premier League results, and we do have fireworks this week, hurrah! But let's have a look at the review. We've got Arsenal went down away to Everton, 1-0, pretty dull game they say. Crystal Palace scrapped real hard against Man U, but they still lost at Man U. But our eyes should turn to the bottom left-hand corner because our adopted team, Nottingham Forest, scored a goal and the other team didn't. Which means fireworks because our adopted team has won a game.
It's time to have a look ahead and see what the weather has in store for us next week.
The weather is so incredibly dull this week. Let's have a look at Nottingham Forest. And what we see is they're in 13th place. Do you remember we adopted them because they're at the bottom of the table with our support? They're rising like a football phoenix. Isn't that fantastic? And now to the weather. There you go. Told you it was dull. It's cloud and sunshine and cloud and sunshine and some sunshine with exceptional cloud. The humidity bang in the middle, 55. The chance of rain down in 10%. And there is just a slight tickle of a breeze at about 11 kilometres an hour. All exceedingly dull.
This has been the Khmer Times News. Please do subscribe and comment and stay up to date with all the breaking news by following us on both Facebook and Telegram. This has been Paolo Bonini, and that was the week that was. I'll see you next weekend for your weekly Roundup.